webinar. I am super excited to have you all joining us today as we get into a really, people really want to hear about this topic. So we're going to be getting right into it. But I have Jade Beason here with me today, and we're going to be talking about how to build your video first social strategy. So while we're getting started, I want to hear from all of you in the live chat. Tell me a little bit about what kind of content that you're creating, what your goals are. Are you a small business owner who is looking to get more clients from social media? Are you a podcaster that's looking to grow your audience on social? Tell us a little bit about you in the live chat. And as we're doing that, a little bit about us. I am Kendall, the community manager at Riverside. And Riverside is, for anyone who doesn't know, we're an end-to-end content creation platform. So you can record in high quality, edit your content, create clips, get them made for you, get transcripts, anything for this video first social strategy we're talking about. You can create it and implement it right on Riverside. So we'll be talking a bit about that. But as we're getting a lot of feedback in the live chat, Jade, hello.
Hi
How?
everyone. So excited
Yeah,
to be here.
tell us a little bit about you and about your the YouTube following. That's really impressive that you've been able to grow through your own social media and video first strategy.
Thank you. Yeah, well, the way I like to describe myself is I'm a content creator and I create content which helps my fellow creators bridge the gap between doing what they love and earning an income. So I have a background in marketing. I worked in marketing for about 8 years and I studied in marketing as well. And I always say that I felt like I cheated the system a bit when I first started my journey. I started in November 2020. Within 6 months, I quit my job and I was doing this full time. And people often ask me, like, how was you able to make that transition so quickly? And honestly, it was like my marketing and business background. I wouldn't have been able to do it without that knowledge. So once I kind of realized that, and I realized there were so many creators out there who produce far better content than I do, but haven't been able to turn it into a full-time career simply because they don't have that background. I just realized that I had a lot of knowledge and value to share. So that's what I spend all day doing, helping creators bridge that gap.
That is amazing because I completely agree with you that there are so many incredible content creators. And I think that what's missing and what I would love to get to in the bottom of this session, but there's a lot to cover when it comes to marketing. But I think that that's what's cool about this session is that we're talking about kind of a one small asset, but like very small aspect, but very impactful aspect about marketing because you can create incredible content, but you want to make sure that it gets in front of the right people. And so I want to really jump right into it. We've got a lot of people in the chat that are saying that they are podcasters or they're small business owners. When you're I want this session to be really actionable with a lot of takeaways that people can apply to their own channel. So take me back to when you were creating your strategy and what you recommend for other people to create their strategies. What's the first thing that you're really looking at when you're creating a strategy or helping others plan theirs?
So, great question. First thing that I normally look at is my audience, so specifically who it is that I'm trying to target with my content. This, again, is the marketing background. This was always the thing that we started with. When it came to us planning any form of marketing activity, we had to figure out who our target audience are. Now, a lot of people sometimes don't necessarily want to do that as one of their first steps. A lot of the time when we approach content creation, we want to do so from a place of what do we enjoy creating and what do we want to share. And whilst that's important, that really is what you think about when it comes to your niche. You want to make sure that whatever niche you're in, you really care about. When it comes to the delivery, the way in which you talk about what you care about, the formats you use, your tone of voice, that does need to be tailored for a specific group of people, right? If you're not being very specific with who your content's for, then it's not going to land with anyone. Vague content is not going to get you to where you want to get to. So the first thing I start with is my audience. I start with like the really simple questions first. So things like their demographics, like how old are they? Where do they live? And I only ever dive into the bits of information which are relevant to my niche. So a good example I like to use is if I'm working with someone who's like a marriage counselor, they might specify that their audience are married, because that's needed if you're going to be a marriage counselor, versus myself who creates content about marketing. It doesn't matter if my audience are married or not. Like, that's not something that's relevant. So that's something that is relevant to some niches and not necessarily to others. So I always recommend that. Oh, have we lost?
We
I think
have.
we've
Hold
lost
on.
Kendall.
That was my. Sorry, it's my camera.
It's okay. I was
You
just
can keep
yapping
going.
and yapping.
No,
Okay.
keep going. Yeah.
So that's, I normally start with the simple stuff. So demographics, I move on to the slightly harder questions to answer, such as what are my audience psychographics? So what do they like? What do they dislike? And then I try and get a little bit deeper once I get through those first two initial questions. So once I know their demographics and their psychographics, I then move on to things like, okay, what kind of content do they like to engage with when they are scrolling through social media? I ask myself, what are their pain points? That's my favorite question to dive into. What are some things that your audience find annoying or irritating when it comes to your niche or the content you want to create? When you get good at identifying what those pain points are, you can start to create content which solves those pain points or helps them with those pain points. And that's often some of the most valuable content you can create. So yeah, to answer your question, I dive straight into audience analysis so that I get to a stage where I'm really, really clear on who it is I'm creating content for.
So I think that because, well, first of all, hello again, because now I'm back on video. But when we're talking, I'm also a marketer, so I hear pain points. I know what you mean. But like, how are you really getting into? You hear about who these people are, and then how are you thinking about what their pain points are, and then thinking about the kind of videos. Let's connect it to video. Like, how do you really think about? Okay, this person is this way, this is what they care about, so I'm going to create this video for them, because I know that from marketing, but let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think at the top there is the question around like how if I'm not that person, then how do I know what their pain points are? A lot of us do end up targeting people who are quite similar to us though, so that ends up being a little bit easier. But there has to become a moment where you start to get comfortable with putting yourself in other people's shoes, which is a lot of what marketing is. It's you putting yourself in the headspace of your audience and then taking it from there. Once you get to the stage where you're like, okay, if I know that I'm creating content, I've got a podcast that's all about how to look after your plants. It's always the example I use because I look around my flat and I have dead plants everywhere. So let's say you've got a podcast about how to look after your plants. You would know instinctively from that some of the pain points that your audience are going to have are they don't know what plants to purchase for where they live. They have really long winters. So what plants should they buy? They don't know where to put their plants. Direct sunlight, not direct sunlight. These are all little things or questions that you know your audience will have, either instinctively or maybe as a result of you going through feedback on either your content or other creators' content, where you can see people asking questions or not really understanding a certain element of your content. You can use that as a really rich source of data to then understand what your audience's pain points are. Once you have a list of those, I usually recommend you've got at least 10, but I also recommend that you keep it as like a rolling list. So every now and then you'll think of more pain points, add them to that list. You literally take one of those pain points and try and make it as specific as possible. And you create a piece of content that's going to touch on that pain point. In terms of how you do that, the next step that I normally recommend people do, and this is also just like the next step of their strategy, is picking like a value vehicle, I call it. It's basically figuring out what type of value you're going to provide through your content. So your content has to be valuable. If you don't provide something of value to your audience, they're not going to provide something of value back. So if you're creating content because you want your audience to watch it, engage with it, share it, maybe even purchase something from you, they're not going to do any of those things until you provide something of value to them first. That is just how content creation and social media works. So when it comes to that, you have to figure out what your value vehicle is going to be. And it can change. It can change for every post if you want it to, or it can remain the same. My value vehicle is educational content. Almost all of the content you find from me, the way I'm providing value is I'm going to educate you hopefully on something, right? Another value vehicle for me is inspirational content. So I will often create content that's actually designed to inspire you. So I'm not educating you on something, I'm not teaching something, but I am hopefully inspiring you in some way. Another really popular one is entertainment value. So when, when you're like on TikTok or something and you're seeing someone who's like dancing or who's doing a comedy skit, and you're thinking, well, what's their value? Their value is that they're entertaining you. Like, that's how they're providing something of value to you. And the last one is relatability, like relatable value. This is usually what the value that people provide through like vlogs, and like behind the scenes and that kind of content where your audience sees it and they feel quite seen and heard because they're relating to you on such a deep level. So that one's a little bit more elusive, I feel, but it is a really popular value vehicle. So once you have like your list of pain points that your audience has, you then want to figure out which value vehicle you're going to use to talk about that pain point. So if you know that your audience, if we use the same niche of like plant care, as
Hmm.
exciting as that niche is, um, let's say your audience really struggle with, understanding where to put their plants. There's a few different ways that you can provide value for that piece of content. You could do an educational piece of content where you're going to educate them on where to put their plants. You could do a relatable piece of content that's maybe also a bit entertaining where you're doing a video of all the plants that you've killed in your life and you've got some sad music in the background, you're doing a funeral for the plant that you've just killed. Do you see how you can provide value for one pain point but in different ways? And as I said, you don't always have to stick with that value vehicle either. You can change it up, you can mix it up. But it's a great way to ensure that you're creating content for your audience because you know those pain points are for your audience and it's valuable in some way.
That I really love the examples that like there are just so many ways that you can do that different thing to speak to that pain point. And another thing that I just think is really helpful that I'd say for podcasters specifically, that I saw that there were a lot in the chat. Maybe the pain points, you speak to them in your episode, but maybe it can go beyond your episode. And after you record your episode, you record just a few quick social videos that speak to those specific pain points. Or this is 3 ways I learned how to not kill my plants. If we're going to use this
Yeah.
as the example, we're going to keep going with with
Yeah.
that as the example. But so when you think about your next episodes, this doesn't even have to be for social media. This could be for your next episodes. Think about who the person is, and you should always be doing this. Think about the person who is going to be listening, and then from there, that's how you should structure your episodes. And then I want you to challenge yourself to, after you're done recording that episode, make 3 quick videos that you think would do well on social. Because I think that a kind of problem that I see a lot of people get into is that they only clip from their long form, and that's how they're hoping to grow on social media. But I think, and we've talked about this before, Jade, that you also need to be creating kind of social first video if you want that to perform on social. Not to knock those clips, but to say that that might, just clipping your long form might not be enough. And we're going to get to that. So we're talking about building that strategy, figuring out what you're going to talk about and how. Now I want to talk about executing it. So what are you, when you're creating clips for social, what are you making sure that you're putting in there? Like what are just a few things that like this has to be in there if you're creating for them?
Yeah. So first of all, when it comes to social media content, especially on platforms like Instagram more than any of the others, but especially on the other ones as well, you got to think about quality first. And I know that's so ironic because I'm literally dialing in from my MacBook webcam because my other one's broken. I promise you, when I make my social content, it's on my other camera. But that's like one of the first things you've got to focus on, right? You've got to focus on the quality because the algorithms are going to scan the quality of your content before it does anything else. It's going to figure out, is your video pixelated? Is the lighting good? Is the audio good? Before anything else, that's the first thing it's going to look at. The next thing is going to be the hook. And I'm sure we all know about hooks now because there's so much content around it, which is great, right? It's about what you do or what you say in the first 3 seconds of your video that's going to get someone to stop scrolling. The key here is to make sure that whenever you're doing some form of hook, it can be a visual hook, it can be an audio hook. You want to make sure that the hook you're using, you specifically selected for your audience, and you're not just using a hook for any reason. You're not just copying someone else's hook. You're not just using a hook because someone said it's good. It's got to be a hook that you have purposely selected because you know your audience are going to respond well to it, right? Like, you know, when people do the visual hooks and they've got those really high quality, high end production content, and maybe they sit down on their chair, they spin around, the text goes behind their head. That works specifically for them because they know their audience appreciates that level of production quality. Whereas you'll find other hooks from people who are just holding their phone, walking down the street, and they're really quickly saying, you know, okay, what's a good example? If we're saying plant care again, they're really quickly starting their video by being like, this is why your plants died. Right? And it's so rough and it's ready, but it works for them because they know that their audience are going to respond well to that. So that's a common misconception, is like any old hook will do. That's not the case. You've got to be thinking about a hook that you know your audience is going to respond well to. For the rest of the video, especially if we're talking about creating videos specifically to promote your podcast episode, you want to think about what's the main pain point that you kind of touch upon in that podcast episode. There might be a few, just pick one. When it comes to short form, you only want to focus on one pain point at a time because you don't have enough time to cover multiple of them properly. So pick the one pain point, pick your value vehicle for that pain point, merge those two things together, and then in the comments, not in the comments, in the caption, direct people to the full podcast episode. One of the most important things, if you're creating content to promote your podcast, is that that piece of content needs to be valuable by itself. So someone needs to come across that piece of content and be like, what a great reel, what a great TikTok, I love that video. And then be like, oh, there's a whole podcast episode where they dive into this. Amazing, I'm gonna go check it out. What doesn't work is if you're treating it like a trailer. And trailers do have a place in our strategy for certain things, don't get me wrong, but trailers for podcasts don't quite work anymore. So if you're doing like a trailer where it's like hinting to something really valuable that's going to be shared, but you're not actually sharing what the value is in the reel, people are just going to be frustrated and they're not going to want to go and watch the whole episode. So keep that in mind.
Somebody in the chat, Eric asked, why are we focused on pain points? Why not pleasure points? Like, what is your, I thought that's an interesting question. What's your take on, we talk all about things that might frustrate people or pain people, but is there kind of room in this for things that people also think would be funny or that they enjoy?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at things, right? Because the funny entertainment side, I just see that as a vehicle for a pain point. So if we, the same example that we used before, that like your plants keep on dying, if you're using the entertainment value as a vehicle, then it's like a funny video about that. It's just stronger. It doesn't mean that you can't use it a different way. You 100% can. It just normally means that people, if you're using a pain point and you're making it funny, people tend to find it funnier than if you're talking about something that we all love and making it funny. If you're creating an educational piece of content where you're helping someone solve a problem they have, people often find that more valuable than if you're just like bolstering or talking about something that they don't actually need help with. So it doesn't mean that you have to do the pain point route at all. I've just found in my old career as well, like in marketing, that's usually what people find the most valuable. But with some niches, it's even better to do the pleasure angle. It completely depends on kind of your niche and your audience, as does everything. But yeah, love the positive spin on it. I think when I'm thinking about like the value points, that's what makes the pain points positive. So it's not about creating content where you're like, you're struggling to keep your plants alive, and then you're just going to yell at them for it. It's more about trying to turn that into something positive.
So then when you're creating these videos, like what editing techniques are you using when you're like, are you doing text on screen? Are you doing video on screen, images? Like, what are you putting in your videos that other people can be too, besides the hook and having that kind of CTA or link, that place that you want to drive them? What are some visual hooks that can make a video more engaging or perform better online?
Yeah, I think the first thing to think about is like, because there is like a high-end production version that you can do here. So for example, something that's working really well for a lot of creators is like high impactful text that appears behind your head, and it's going to focus on the one word that's going to grab your audience's attention the most, and that usually appears within the first few seconds of your video, and that is performing really, really well for people. It's also using things like animations and photos to bring your points to life, to make them easier to understand and consume. And then there's special effects, there's using sound effects, so that when you're talking about one specific point in your video, video, you've got a sound effect to it to make sure that people are kind of waking up, looking at the screen, and they can see that something's appeared on the screen. So those are the techniques that a lot of people use to really bring their content to life. The one thing I would say is like, think about whether you think your audience wants that. Because to my point previously, sometimes the raw stuff where you don't have all of those extra fancy parts and you just have you, a audio hook and some captions, which is very important. Sometimes that's just enough for audiences. Like it kind of depends. For example, if you're creating content that's specifically for other creators, they often really respond well to like high-end production because that's stuff that they really appreciate, right? Whereas if you are a creator who has a podcast that is all about being unfiltered and you film it from your bed with your best mate and you've just got your mic in your hand, I'm thinking like Alex L's podcast, where she's just kind of like in a different hotel, just chilling. The edits for that, if that was suddenly high-end production, all these graphics and special effects wouldn't work because it doesn't align with the vibe of the podcast itself. So think about that element too, because you might be making your life harder than you actually need to.
And so, yeah, I mean, when you're talking about, like, we're also talking about what your audience would respond to. So I want to quickly make sure that we talk about responding and when you're posting and how you kind of measure what your audience is responding to and how. So we're going to be getting into that, but just really quickly, when you're posting, tell me about, so you create your video, you have your hooks, you have whatever editing that you put on top of that. Then where are you posting it and how do you figure out what's going to perform well where?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So when it comes to your social channels and kind of how you approach the different channels that you're managing, I always recommend that I basically recommend that you rank your social channels. So everyone should kind of have the one core channel that they're focusing on. That's number one. For me, that's YouTube. And then you want to be ranking the rest of your social channels. Even if you're like, oh, but I could be active across all of them, that you need to have them in an order. And the reason why is because life gets in the way. And the sooner we all accept that, the better. So it's important that we don't pretend that like we're never going to experience any issues and we're always going to be consistent across everything and it's always going to feel this easy. It's not. And it's important that we know what's the first thing to go if we are pushed for time, right? So knowing which channel comes off the list helps because it means that the one that's at the top, that core channel, that's actually probably going to be doing majority of the heavy lifting for you. It means that that one is rarely neglected. And it's the fact that you rarely neglect it that is what keeps that channel so strong, right? You have to have your core channel. So always have a focus, have your channels in order. When it comes to which channel to focus on, I recommend that you pick the channel that you enjoy creating content on the most. Previously, I might have said like, well, where are your audience? But in actuality, your audience are probably going to be everywhere. There are only a few kind of niches and topics that don't necessarily fall into that bracket. But for a lot of us, your audience are actually across multiple platforms now. It's not like back in the day where like only younger people are on TikTok, people are a lot more spread out. So instead, I recommend that you focus on what you enjoy creating content on because the enjoyment is going to be the thing that pushes you to experiment with the content. It's going to be the thing that keeps you consistent. It's going to be the thing that keeps you excited. If you are focusing on a channel that you actually don't enjoy creating content on, it's going to be really easy for you to quit. And quitting is going to be the number one thing that's going to stop you from progressing. So find the channel where you've got the formats that you enjoy the most and then focus on that one as your core channel. Does that answer your question?
That definitely answers my question because I feel like people just kind of want to kind of flood the zone with like, I'm going to make one video and put it out on every single thing. And I think that this answers the idea that if that's the time that you have, you can do that, but create for one core channel. And then if you want to spread it around, but like know at least that you're focusing on one core channel. And just because we're live, I'm going to bring up Ryan's comment, the Rode Gremlins. Yes, I'm having a little bit of a camera issue over here, but it is because I decided to try a brand new camera before this live session. So that is my tip to all of you. Don't do that. Here we are. Riverside. We're just like you. So, okay, we've gone through ideating your plan. We've gone through what you're doing while you're editing that video. And then now we've gone to posting. So you've posted. What are your thoughts on like, what can you do to keep like with the algorithm to kind of make sure that your video's seen? I know that people are talked about you don't want to post and leave it. Like, let's talk about kind of what you do after you're posting. Even if you made the best video in the world, if you can post it and then like you kind of forget it, it's not going to go far. So what are you doing after you post that you think is helping boost the engagement on those posts?
Yeah, so cross promoting is important, especially when you're in the really early days of your journey. So if you are like, for example, when I first started my YouTube channel, I had like a Instagram that was associated with it, but it was fresh as well, so there was no one on it. So I would use my personal Instagram account where I had like a few hundred people and they were just friends and family, and I would share a link on there. And it sounds like a really obvious thing. A lot of us don't do it though, and that would help me just get my first initial views. I would share links on like my WhatsApp groups. I would add my most recent video to like my signature and my email. Cross promote as much as you can in the beginning, because that's going to help you with like manual reach when you're basically forcing your content into other people's hands. That does
Can I
help.
quickly jump in really quick and ask
Yeah.
links on posts? Yes or no? Because I
What
want to bring people
posts?
to my podcast. So like on Facebook, I don't know, like on LinkedIn, let's say. I want to bring people to my podcast, but aren't links, don't they like drive down, aren't like, I've heard that they're going to drive down your engagement because LinkedIn's primary goals, they want you to stay on LinkedIn. So they're not going to really boost a post that has a link to my podcast, maybe. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so no social channel has ever come out and said that this is what happens. I'm pretty sure Meta has actually come out and said that they don't do that. However, a lot of people look at their analytics and they're like, well, that's funny because it looks like that's what's happening. So I completely
Yes.
understand where kind of that comes from. I think at the end of the day, it is a prime piece of real estate when it comes to getting people to even be aware that you've got something worth sharing. And at the end of the day, there's no other way to redrive people if you can't do a direct link. So if you want to go another way about it and be like, oh, there's a link in my bio, XYZ, the more steps you put into the process, the less likely people are to actually go ahead and do that. There are, of course, like automation tools that you can use now, which are actually approved by social media sites, which never used to be a thing, where you can set up automation so that if someone comments a word, you can send a link directly to them via DM. And that can help you kind of get around that issue. So those are worth checking out as well. But otherwise, it is one of those things where you're like, okay, it might reach fewer people, but at least those people are going to get a direct link.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And so I want to talk about, okay, you've posted it. What are you looking at on your side for the analytics? Like what's defines a good video? What defines like a good performance? What defines bad performance? I know that you actually have some analytics of your own to share with
I
us.
do. It's the show and tell portion.
Yes, we love this portion here.
I love this part. Well, okay, I'm going to share my screen with you guys and I'm going to show you my analytics. So, what I've basically queued is two videos, one video that performed well and another one that didn't. And I'm basically going to show you guys how I figure out why one performed better than the other. And also, I'm just going to show you like how I know what to change next time. So you're in my YouTube studio right now. You can see my studio, right?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, so you're in my YouTube studio right now. We're looking at a video that I uploaded recently, and it is not doing too great. So I uploaded it on the 22nd of Jan. It has about 3.5 thousand views. As you can see by this really big text here that's kind of shouting at me that the video isn't performing well, it has 48% fewer views than my average video. So it's not doing great. Now, what a lot of people will do is be like, oh, that's so annoying. That video was a flop. I don't know why, and then kind of move on. The beauty of analytics, specifically on YouTube, I'm going to be honest, you don't get all of these on other platforms, specifically on YouTube, is that they do give you the power to dive into each video. And if you know what to look for, you'll actually be able to figure out why it's not performing well. And you can either change the trajectory of the video or you can take those learnings into your future videos. It's one of the reasons why I love YouTube so much. I like to know why things are performing well or why they're not performing well. So this is a video that isn't doing so well. Some of the metrics, or in fact, let's focus on the top 3 metrics that I like to look at because there are a lot, but let's just focus on the top 3. The first one is my impressions. So if we click on my reach tab, here it's showing me that my impressions since the 22nd of Jan are 69,200 impressions. We're going to flip flop between tabs here because I want to do direct comparisons. If we then jump to this other video that is actually performing really well for me, that was also uploaded, I think this was actually uploaded on the 3rd of Feb. So this video is actually far more recent than the other one, and it's still performing a lot better. So it's the same timestamps as previously. So we're looking at the same amount of time. Here you can see that if you click on reach, my impressions for this video are 229,000. So that's 229,000 and the other one has 69,000. So this is a clear indication that the impressions for this video are obviously a lot higher. When you scroll down, you'll be able to figure out where your impressions are coming from. And if anyone doesn't know what I mean by impressions, it's literally when you go on your YouTube channel and a bunch of videos appear on your browse page, all of those videos that just appeared, all of those creators just got an impression, right? Because their video just appeared on their screen. So it's every time my video is on someone's screen, even if you, oh, sorry, I just hit the mic. Even if you didn't notice it, it doesn't matter. If my videos appeared on the screen somewhere, then I've just gained an impression. It's really important we look at impressions because if no one's seeing that my videos are there, then how is anyone ever going to watch them? So that's why it's the first metric that we look at. So this section down here, these little sections are called cards, by the way, in your studio. So this card here, which is called how viewers find this video, you can see here that almost 50% are finding it through browse features. So this is when they log onto their YouTube and it just appears, right? So that's mostly YouTube's algorithm doing that for me, which is great. And then the second biggest one is YouTube search. This is what I like to see. I like to see YouTube search here because I create very search-driven content. All my content is quite specific about specific things. So therefore, I want it to be appearing when people are searching on YouTube. So it's important that this is part of my reach. If we scroll down further, we'll be able to see which search terms people are actually using to find my video. So this is an important thing to look at as well, because you want to make sure that these are actually aligned with your video topic. So people are searching these keywords: Instagram new update, Instagram update, blah, blah, blah. This is great because this is exactly what this video is about. This video is about Instagram update. So this is amazing. It means that my search is working really well. It means that I'm getting some great impressions from search. And this also clearly is telling me that YouTube are promoting my video as well. So ticks all round when it comes to impressions. Whereas this one, impressions are low, search isn't even here, which is actually quite wild for me. I don't think I've had this before. So the search isn't even popping up here, which means no one's searching for terms and this video is popping up. It's mostly browse pages and channel pages, which is a bit of a red flag for me. And then if we scroll down at the search terms, this is also a bit of a red flag. So majority of my search traffic, which is really, really small, is coming because someone searched my name, which is very flattering.
Yeah,
I love
seriously.
that that's happening.
Yeah.
So that makes me feel good. However, this to me is a clear sign that YouTube doesn't know what my video is about, and therefore it's not showing it when people are searching for videos similar to mine. Yes, you've still got a few keywords here that are relevant. This video is all about starting a business and what people don't tell you about starting a business. So there are a few relevant ones here. This one isn't relevant, the Facebook business page one, but it's not as targeted as the other one was. So by looking at that first key metric, which is my impressions, and looking at these different cards, I can tell that one of the issues for this video, one of the reasons this isn't performing well, is because my search isn't very good. So my keywords in my title, my keywords in my description isn't strong enough, which means YouTube doesn't know what my video is about. So therefore, I'm not getting much traffic from search.
I do want to jump in really quick because I want to keep this is really great to see this on screen. Eli had asked, what is helpful to include to increase the searchability? So you're saying YouTube doesn't know what your video is about. What do you do in that case? Like, is it title, description? Is it a mix of things? Tell me more.
Yes. So let's go to this other one and I can show you my description. So essentially, what I like to do is spend some time finding good keywords. I use a tool called TubeBuddy. There are other tools called vidIQ. You can get keyword suggestions in Riverside as well. If you use Riverside to edit your videos, it's in the little description bit that you can automatically generate through AI. So there are a few different places that you can get some keywords for. So What you want to do is spend some time utilizing those tools to find keywords that accurately describe your video. That's really important. Don't just use a keyword because you think it's going to be like performing well. If it's not relevant to your video, then it won't work. So here you can see a keyword that I actually have, and I say keyword, but it can be multiple words. It could be a key phrase. 2025 Instagram features is one. Instagram updates was one as well. So I've got two in my title. This paragraph here is usually where the other ones are. So this is when I describe what the video is about, and then I include keywords like Instagram updates, another Instagram update there. I've got like platform here and there, content creator, business owner. Do you see? There's like a few different keywords that I've put there. And that's usually where the keywords are. You can also have keywords on like your file name because YouTube will analyze every part of your video. Mine here says IG. Yeah, every single part it's going to look at. Mine says IG updates, which is fine, but like it would have been better if it said Instagram updates, for example.
I like that it also says final video. Like we've all been there where like it's like final. Really, this is the final one.
Yeah, final version 8.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so you can do it there. And then another thing that people don't realize is that YouTube and other platforms are also analyzing the actual content itself. So you can bet that in this video, I probably say the keyword Instagram updates like 10 times. To be honest, it comes naturally now. I remember in the beginning, I was trying to be quite intentional, but that does help as well because YouTube do an entire transcript of your video, right? So it can use that transcript to figure out what your video is about. So if you keep on using these keywords, it will know what your video is about. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it definitely does. There's a lot that we keep. There's a lot to go through for your analytics. If you wanted to share more, I think this is really helpful for people that are watching along.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love my analytics, so I'm more than happy to continue to share. So there's 3 core metrics, right? The first is your impressions. The second one is your click-through rate, one of my favorites. So if you click on reach, here, you're going to see what your click-through rate is. Mine seems to be doing a spike. Oh, wow. That's a really high click-through rate that it suddenly got to 7.8%. I don't think I've had that before. But on average for this video, and this is the video that's performing well, my click-through rate is 5.1%. That's really healthy. The general rule is between 4 to 6% is what you're aiming for. Big caveat in that the more impressions your content gets, the lower the click-through rate will be. That's just math. So if you're someone who's going viral and you're getting millions and millions of impressions, you might have a click-through rate that's 2%, and that will be performing really well for you because you're getting millions of impressions, you know? Whereas if you're newer to the platform and you're getting like 1,000 impressions, your click-through rate might be 7%. So just keep that in mind. But on average, between 4 to 6% is good, especially I know for my channel, that's normally where I'm aiming. Whereas for this video, so the one that's not performing well, it is 3%. That is very low. Very, very low click-through rate. This to me is a clear sign that out of everything we're going to talk about, the main issue here is the click-through rate. And when there's an issue with the click-through rate, it means there's an issue with the title. Let's go here. And with the thumbnail. So the thumbnail is like it's like an advert for your video, right? If you get the advert right, then people are going to want to click. Your title is kind of secondary to that. People tend to look at your thumbnail first and then your title, but it's still part of it as well. Whereas for this one, if we click back here, this is what my thumbnail looked like. Had WTF in it, which probably helped. My title was very engaging. It was very clear about what this video is going to be about. It's also worth saying, you know, the topic is always going to be part of it as well. The topic is a harder thing to measure when it comes to your analytics. But obviously, I'm talking about Instagram updates around the time where they changed their content guidelines, announced a new app. You know, a lot was happening. So that's a big reason why this performed well as well. So yeah, those are the 2 things that I would look at. So when it comes to the video that's not performing well, if I wanted to change the trajectory of this video, I would change the thumbnail first.
That is like, it's nice to be able to know exactly if this happens, because we talk all the time about like, these are what you're aiming for. But then you feel a little bit lost if you're like, okay, but I'm not at the place where I'm supposed to be aiming for. So what do I do next? So you're saying click-through rate, change the thumbnail or the title. For impressions, is there anything that you would recommend that somebody could change?
Impressions is going to be mainly your
Keywords.
SEO, so the
Mm.
steps that we mentioned before. And then the second element when it comes to impressions is going to be your topics. So it's going to be your ability to pick topics that are trending. So just topics that people are actually interested in. And a lot of that just comes down to you spending time on social media, which feels counterproductive for me to be like, watch more YouTube videos. But the more immersed you are in social media, the easier it is for you to pick up on when a topic is trending within your audience, and therefore you can talk about it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so then there is a third element or metric that I like to look at. There's obviously a lot of metrics, but this is the third one in terms of the really important ones, and this is to do with your retention. So for that, I go on the engagement tab. And here you've got a lovely graph to show me that I'm underperforming in every way possible. And when you scroll down, it's going to tell you the average percentage of your video that has been viewed. So you can see it here. And then keep on scrolling. It's going to give you this lovely retention graph where it's actually going to show you where people are dropping off. Now, it's worth noting that you will always have this big dip in the beginning. They'll think about a time where you've just been like in a YouTube hole and then suddenly you've been like, oh my God, I need to get back to work. And then you've just clicked off the video that you were on. It's not necessarily that the video wasn't good. It's just that you've decided to stop watching YouTube. So that is always going to kind of happen. But this is why your hooks are so important because you like, look, I had 30 seconds exactly to get people's attention there. But there is a little bit of insight here from YouTube where it does tell me that 64% of viewers were still watching after 30 seconds, which is below typical. So that does tell me that my hook probably wasn't as strong as it could have been for this one. Um, Whereas when we go on the video that is performing better and go on the analytics, go on audience, not audience, sorry, engagement, you can see that the average percentage viewed is very similar, 40%, but this video is longer, so it actually means that people are watching it for longer. And here the retention graph is a lot healthier. So here 68% of people versus 64 were still watching at the 30 mark, which is typical for me. And you can even see that in some elements, people kind of went above my average retention, which is pretty good. But when I compare these two, I don't see that drastic of a difference, to be honest. So this kind of tells me that the hook could have been better on the other video. You can't change that afterwards. Like you kind of have to take that learning into your next video. But after doing that full kind of analysis and that run through of my impressions, my click through rate, and my retention, what I would conclude is that the first thing that would need to change for the video that isn't performing well would be the thumbnail. The second thing I would then look at would be the SEO, so the keywords. The third thing might be the title. And then the fourth would be just reviewing the hook and seeing if I can make it better in the future.
When I'm seeing this and I'm thinking about like when we're talking about long form and a lot of people here have their podcasts, like maybe a good takeaway from this can be not to start it with your opening song or like something like that. Like maybe start it with the hook kind of question that you're going to be getting to in your video. And maybe that's different from your audio version, but your video version when it's on YouTube should be this really great hook to get people to continue to watch. And that can be as like a takeaway, something that you can apply that everyone who's watching to your next video. Try out recording a different intro just for your video and try doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody had asked, how important is it to have your photo in the thumbnail? Just when we're talking about those thumbnails.
Yeah, so for most people, it's super important. I say most because there's the odd channel, for example, like a faceless channel or a channel that focuses on travel and therefore wants to have this beautiful scenic photo as the thumbnail. There are the odd channels where this isn't as necessary. For most channels where you are the core part of your video, having a photo of yourself is very important. People respond to seeing humans. They want to see your face. Having a photo of yourself that is ideally cropped from like here upwards. This was a tip that I got from a big YouTuber years ago and it made such a difference to me. Avoid doing the waist upwards. People can't see your face. You want to do from like your shoulder upwards, and having your face front and center in your thumbnail is going to really help people with your clicks as well. So yeah.
Awesome. And then I think we'll move into, we got 15 minutes left here. So I want to move into some of the questions that you have all asked. But actually, really quickly, before we get into that, sorry for that teaser. If so, a lot of people like they're taking their long form video and they're clipping it.
Yeah.
And it's great to want to create the social first video. But for people who are creating their longer form and wanting to then adapt that for social, what would you say are there any tips for, are you, when you're creating your social content, are you ever cutting it from your long form content and kind of readapting it? And if so, what are the tips that you kind of use to make sure that those videos work on social?
Yeah, so I actually did a whole video about repurposing, and it was specifically focusing on Riverside. So there's about to be a huge Riverside plug. They did not brief me
I
to do
swear I
this, I
didn't.
promise.
Exactly. I love that we walked into this.
So on Riverside, there is a tool called Magic Clips, and it's their AI tool, which allows you to find the best parts of your long form video content and then cut it into smaller clips. The reason why I call out this tool specifically, love that. Oh my God,
I
I
had a
love
cute.
it.
I just happened this. I swear we didn't plan this, but I happen to have a cute.
I love it. So what I love about using this tool, especially over other kind of cut down tools that I've used in the past, is that you can then customize it further. So we have moved away from a world where it is enough to just auto generate a cut down and then assume that every version of that is going to be perfect. Some of them will be great, but some of them will need a bit of tweaking. So when you use Magic Clips, you can find the best part of your videos, and then you can actually go ahead and still remove sections, still remove the parts where you want to remove the ums and the ahs, and you can do that easily using the text editor. You can also then, if you've got a great clip and you're like, okay, the content is great, the value is great, but the hook isn't quite there, you can still take sections from the other parts of your video and use that as the hook for your cut down. That way, you're still creating a cut down really quickly and easily, but you're also creating one that still has the core elements of a short form video and therefore can stand by itself. And I think that's a missing part that a lot of people don't necessarily do at the moment.
Yes, I endorse this message and I completely agree. I also think like sometimes I'll do like I'll take a magic clip that was identified and I'll put it at the beginning of another clip that I'm doing. So maybe that's the hook for it. And
Yeah.
so try copying, pasting in your transcript and see if you can have that hook. And then like for example, we had a competition on our community group and I started it with a video of me like kind of fumbling trying to open the envelope and like laughing at myself. And then I went into the actual announcement saying thank you all for submitting. So that was enough to get people to continue watching. You know what the video is about, and it also kind of humanized and made people want to keep on watching.
Love
So
that.
yeah, and while we're showing text on screen, if you want to hear more about these competitions, come on over to the Riverside community. Cool. All right. So, for everyone in the chat, if you have some questions, this is your time. But we did have some that were sent in beforehand. So, want to I do want to get into that. So, one question was they want to know more about, from Connor, they want to know more about reaching audiences in different languages. Is that something that you're ever considering when you're creating your content? Have you tried anything like that to reach people with different in different languages?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's a tricky one more because of what I talk about is actually quite different in different markets. So, like, all the way down to if I'm doing an Instagram updates, Instagram actually looks completely different in some countries than in others. So, for me, it actually gets quite complicated. But I have spoken to quite a few creators about this, and there are so many tools available right now, but also being developed, which is going to make creating content and dubbing a language over it a lot easier and a lot more seamless for a lot of creators. YouTube actually have a dubbing tool that they're rolling out to everyone, which, if anyone doesn't know what dubbing is, it's literally when you watch a piece of content and instead of hearing the creator's voice and their language, it's a different voice speaking a different language. So you're still watching a piece of content, but you're hearing it and consuming it in your language. YouTube is releasing an AI dubbing tool, which will make it easy for creators to produce content in a different language. And they're even using tech, which makes it like mirror your mouth movement. So it doesn't even, you know, when you watch dubbing and it seems like it's like annoying because
You
it's not right.
you might even
Um,
see something like that on Riverside soon, but who knows? Who knows?
oh,
Watch this space. I'm just saying, watch this space.
I love it. A bit of a sneak peek. So yeah, those types of tools are going to be incredible for any creators who want to expand their reach to other countries. I think it's going to be really, really powerful, and it's really exciting to think about what that's going to do to the creator landscape in the future.
Also, another question from John. Do you recommend, and a few people were plus oneing this, so I see you all in the chat. Do you recommend using apps like Hootsuite to post on multiple social sources? Hootsuite, or there are a few others. Like, do you
Mm.
recommend kind of those multi-posting apps? Have you seen that they are like that they get more engagement, less engagement?
Yeah. So I don't necessarily see a difference in the engagement or the performance, which I think is a good thing. There was a time where there was a rumor going around where like if you posted your content through a third party, then it wouldn't perform as well. But the important thing here is that it has to be a third party app that's approved by Instagram or TikTok or YouTube. And most of the time, if they're allowing you to post a piece of content through their app, then it means that it is approved by those platforms because otherwise the tech wouldn't be available to them. So as long as that's the case, it shouldn't impact the performance of your content either from a positive or a negative perspective. So therefore, whether or not you want to use them, it should come down to your workflow. So if that's something that works for you and therefore makes it easier for you to organize yourself, then it's worth using. I actually still use one for my Instagram, even though it doesn't automatically post most of my content. It will only do it for like my carousels, or like my photos. For my reels, I save them as drafts and post them. Honestly, it works more like a reminder for me. It tells me which post needs to go out when, and it gives me that nudge that way. And it's just become part of my workflow. Even though to someone else who tried to do that from scratch, like who wasn't used to it, they'd probably think it wasn't an efficient workflow, but it just works for me. So I think that's what it comes down to. If it works for you, then continue. It won't hurt your content.
Exactly. Like I completely agree. If it's going to make you consistent, I think that that consistency is so key. So if that's what's going to make you consistent, and also if you're creating this content, like you're doing a ton of work. So if it's going to make this a bit more manageable
Oh,
for
yeah.
you, then do it, you know? So we have a question also from French who says, question about captions. Lots of platforms have their own caption functionality, but so do video production platforms like Riverside. Where to put them? What are you doing as far as captions?
What do you mean where to put them? Are you like when you upload like where? What do you mean?
French, let us know in the chat. I'm thinking he
Yeah,
means like where to put them on screen because I think sometimes people are putting them at the
got it.
bottom, but then YouTube kind of will put their own captions on
Yeah.
top of that.
Yeah, so with anything like this, I always recommend that you follow the standard of the platform that you're on. So, and for the most part, it is kind of bottom and center. So, if you're ever unsure about stuff like that and you're posting something to TikTok, spend time consuming content on TikTok and see what's performing well, and then mirror that. Keep in mind, big caveat here, I'm obviously not talking about mirroring anyone's content or anything like that. It's just the formatting part. There's been some studies that have been done, and I wish I could quote them and tell you the exact numbers and the sources, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But I remember reading studies in the past which talk a lot about familiarity and how important that is when people are scrolling on social media platforms. So whilst they want all of our content to be unique and valuable in its own way in which it's presented to us, they want it to feel like something that's familiar because that just finds it, they just find people just find it easier to consume that way. So if they're scrolling through TikTok and people are using captions, they kind of want to see the same style. It's why sometimes when you're on Instagram, for example, you'll see people using Instagram fonts, even though you're probably thinking you could easily have created that on something else and use a different font, but they're using on Instagram because they know people like to feel familiar when they're scrolling.
Mhm.
So yeah, just think about that when it comes to formatting.
And another question that we have, what is your suggested length for videos? So what would you say for let's go Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, longer form YouTube videos, and TikTok, let's say.
Ooh, okay.
Or LinkedIn. We could even add that, but yeah, now I'm putting on
Yeah.
too
Let's
much.
let's see how we get. Let's start with so Instagram Reels was the first one, right? So for a lot of you guys will probably know that they've very recently expanded the length of Reels, so now you can upload 3 minute Reels. They will do a push for this, so everything I'm saying right now is very of this moment. My advice would probably going to change in 6 months because that's how social media works. So if I was creating content on Instagram, I would alternate between longer reels to test them because when Instagram has something new, they sometimes push out content where they're utilizing that new feature. So I would test a longer reel that is more between the 90 seconds to 3 minute mark. But I would also have a core part of my content strategy being reels that are under the 1 minute mark. They actually came out and said that like reels under 1 minute I think it was under 1 minute, get pushed out more by the algorithm. And then someone took a photo of the slide where they spoke about that and it went viral. And then they kind of backtracked. But I think that was really interesting. I think that was like a little bit of insight there. So I would still assume that under a minute will still probably perform better, but have a few longer ones just to test out this new 3 minute feature. What's the next one?
YouTube Shorts. Yes.
Shorts, similar thing. They have just extended the length of their shorts to 3 minutes. However, YouTube are a bit different in the fact that they don't just kind of like champion you just because you're using the longer feature. So I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to push longer shorts there. Shorts have always been very short. So I would actually recommend sticking around the 30-second mark for a YouTube short, and just keep an eye on it, because as I said, things will change with every platform. YouTube longer form, that is completely different. YouTube longer form, my rule is like, it should be as long or as short as it needs to be. The beautiful thing about longer form content is that there is no cap on it. So you want to be creating videos which have a great hook and have a good pace, deliver the value, wrap it up very quickly at the end, ask them to watch another video, and then end it. So if you do those things and it takes 6 minutes, or you do those things and it takes 25, then both of those are the right length. Do you know what I mean?
I know
so
exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Like, when I was a video producer, I quote this all the time, but my executive producer, I would say, how long do you want this video? And he would say, as long as it wants to be. And I always stick to that, because you can tell when you're like, especially on YouTube, you're watching the video, you kind of scroll your mouse over to see like, how far is this red line for the how long has been played, like, and how much more time do you have left? That's how long the video wants to be. So if it's still engaging after 3 minutes, after 30 minutes, like whatever that video wants to be, that's how long it should be, and it's engaging.
I agree.
And then another just quick question was that was from Dustin, I believe. When it comes to YouTube Shorts, or, you know, even Instagram Reels, what's a good beginner strategy to like use them successfully? Like, how often should you be posting if you're just starting out?
Is this for all platforms?
This question was for YouTube Shorts specifically.
Okay. YouTube Shorts. Okay. If we're talking about frequency, and this is me assuming that you have like a multi-format channel, so you've got long form as well. So let's say you're posting 1 to 2 long forms per week. I would recommend posting around 5 shorts per week if you can, and just keeping an eye on it from there. One of the main reasons for that number is just because that frequency is going to get you to a place where you're practicing and hopefully give you enough data to figure out what's working and what's not working. So that's really what I'd focus on. And then all the other elements of the elements that we spoke about previously. So making sure you've got that good hook, making sure that the pacing is good, you've got your captions on there, making sure that you're delivering value to your audience in some way, shape, or form. YouTube Shorts is an interesting one because it has evolved quite a bit over the years. Like in the beginning, it was quite high production to kind of mirror the general quality of other YouTube content, but that's changing as it is with every platform, to be honest. It's becoming a lot more casual, and you actually can upload content that is a little bit more rough and ready, and it can still perform well. So it is evolving, but yeah, it is still kind of, out of all of them, it's still potentially the more polished version of short form content, so keep that in mind.
Awesome. And we are hitting the top of the hour, so would you say, when you're creating video, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, is there one quick win, like one challenge that everyone can do? I'm going to start it off and just say that one quick win that I would say or challenge that you can do is when next time you record your long form, I just want you to stay in the chair after your interview and just try to record one short form video of a hook that answers the same question you talked about or talks about the same topic, but just in a few seconds, and make a fun hook for it. Try it out. Let me know how it goes.
That's a great one. I think mine would probably be not to do with the actual filming process, but you know, when you're reviewing your footage and you're kind of making edits, just write down one thing that you're going to do differently for the next video. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It can be something like, okay, you're going to make your hook 20 seconds rather than 30 seconds. You're going to sit in a slightly different angle last time. Write it down though, because otherwise you're going to be going through your edits and you're going to be noticing things that you can improve on. But because you've not kept note of them, when it comes to time for you to sit down and film again, you're probably not going to improve in those things. And another reason why I say that's super important is because it is those micro changes that you make over time that's going to get you to a place where your content is really flying. Those small things that you're doing every time you create, that's going to really help you reach your goal.
That is a really great challenge, and I'm excited to see what you guys all put out there. In the meantime, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Jade. This has been incredibly insightful and helpful. And for anyone who wants to learn more from Jade, I'll just put on her YouTube channel. And I'll be sending this out also when we send out the recording of this. So thank you so much for joining us. Like this has been really helpful and actionable.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a great chat. I've seen so many like comments and messages be flying on the right hand side. So thank you to everyone for joining and being so engaged. And I really hope you got some value from it.
Yes, and also I just want to say before we wrap up that we have a community we celebrated today on Facebook, or a few days ago on Facebook, 20,000 creators strong. So yes, and so we also have one on Discord as well. And so if you're looking, I'll put this on the screen and I'll send it out later. Oh, that's Riverside University, which is also great. Community Hub. If you are looking to learn more, like you did in this session, from other creators, it is such a great, helpful, supportive place to connect with other people who are going through exactly what you're going through and just hear more about what's worked for them, what hasn't. So take advantage of that. And otherwise, you will be getting a recording of this. So thank you for everyone who tuned in, and can't wait to see what you create. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Mhm. Okay.